Hello, brilliant friends. Welcome back to the School of Self Worth. I am your host, Nicole Song. Today, we're going to dig into a hot topic with my clients: the art of non attachment. It's one of my very favorite things to talk about. So, we are going to dig in today. And if you are an Asian American woman who wants to come out of hiding so you can own your authentic voice, DM me authentic at Nicole Song on Instagram and let's connect. All right, let's get to it. This amazing episode is going to be so much fun. Recently, one of my clients came to me with this particular problem. She was offered the opportunity to apply for a brand new job in her company. She had been feeling a little bit ho-hum about her current job, and she was like, let's look into this. The more she researched it, the more invested she started to get. She was like, oh my gosh, this job is perfect. I really want this job. She started to get a little bit attached. So we were talking about it and she was telling me about it. And she's like, Nicole, I really want this job. What should I do to not get overexcited, overinvested? Essentially, she didn't say the word attached, but I knew she meant attached. And then my coach brain got really ramped up because I knew we'd get to have one of my very favorite and most important conversations about detachment. So I wanted to bring this here for you today. First, let's talk about non-attachment. So I like the word detachment better. So we're going to really go down the road of detachment. So when we are attached to something, we are emotionally invested. We want things to go our way. We feel very particular about how it occurs. We are attached. We're like, this is the way it's going to happen. I'm going to get this job on this date with this salary at this time. And the truth is in life is that things don't really work that way. But especially if you're an Asian American woman, you might have learned that this is how things worked because you grew up with Asian parents who might have had goals for you, like only A pluses and only the biggest activities so that you could get into the dream college and then you could have the exact right opportunities afterward for the right job and the right salary. And then you get married and then you have kids and then you do the whole thing. And you learned that the way for this to happen was you went hard. You worked hard, you studied hard, you played hard, you did all of these things. And then ultimately, you did start to accomplish those. So you reinforce a pattern in your brain where those things came true. But what happens, and this is the side of attachment that most of us fail to see or don't realize is happening, is that when we get attached to a certain outcome happening a certain way, is what we get very focused, myopic, and narrow. We close the door to anything else happening outside of this one thing you're dedicated to. And what happens when you close the door is life starts to get narrow. Life starts to feel prescribed, a little bit mundane sometimes, like this is all set up for you and there's no escape. So if you've been feeling that way in your life, you're like, there's no escape. I have to just keep doing things a certain way. This is a conversation for you. So I'm going to give you another example of how detachment can really support you. I had a client who was coming in to my cohort, Your Clear Calling, and she wanted a promotion so badly. She had been working for it for like a year, and her boss kept promising it to her, and she still was making no progress. So in combination with joining Your Clear Calling, she also decided to take a 10-day vacation, which she had not done in a really long time. And she really went into this practice of like, I'm going to commit to a course that's going to support me to feel powerful, to be seen, to be in my authority. And I'm also going to take time away and not get so wrapped up in this promotion thing. What happens? Literally, as soon as she returns from the vacation, her boss puts her up for promotion. 4 months later, she's interviewing for another job, and then she gets promoted to VP. So she goes from manager to VP literally within 5 months of being in Your Clear Calling. This is what happens when you detach, you open up the door. It's either going to be this or something better. And inside of Your Clear Calling, we go after some really, really big dreams. And sometimes ambitious people think that if you are detached, your dreams get small. In fact, what happens is the opposite. When you detach, your dreams can get even bigger because you don't care if it's not that you don't care, it just if it happens, you're more open to something else happening. And that's when the dreams can actually start to get exponentially big and huge and exciting. So, dreams of partnership, of love, of better relationships with your family, of really big career goals, all of those things start to come true. I have another example of my client Sandy. As soon as she detached from her promotion because she really wanted it, that's also when she got promoted. I could go on and on. There's so many examples inside your clear calling of this happening for different women. But I want to illustrate this with a personal example as well. And before I get into my personal example, I want to share with you the difference between attachment and commitment because they are distinct. So, when you are clear on your commitments, you're clear on what you're up to, who you are, your purpose in the world, and you're committed to that, that is going to really help you get to your dream. And so you want to have this separate from attachment. That does not mean you are attached to the how, the when, the what, like all of those pieces that are at play. That's where we don't want to be attached to it. But you can be very committed to your vision. And if you're like, I'm not committed to a vision, I don't know what my vision is, I feel like I don't even have commitment to myself and all of the things that I need in my life, go to last week's episode. I talk about commitment at length and why it's so essential and so important for you to get to that next level in your life. So if you're like, I need to talk to you about commitment, go to last week's episode. For those of you who are like, okay, I think I'm pretty clear on commitment, but now I really want to look at this attachment thing, stay here with me because that's what we're going to keep talking about. Like, so my personal example is I've shared recently on social media that I'm pregnant. I have been following the dream of pregnancy for nearly a decade and I'm now pregnant. So, what did I have to do over time is I had to constantly check my attachment. When was I going to get pregnant? How, like, what year was it going to be? How soon was I going to have this baby? How old am I? Am I too old to have this child? All of those pieces, there's so much attachment that could be involved when you're on a pregnancy journey. And so I am sharing it with you because I want you to say, like, I was really committed to having a child and I had to detach from how. Was I going to do it through fertility treatments? Was I going to do it with my own egg? Was I going to do it with which partner? I got divorced in the middle of this. Like, who is going to be the person who's going to parent this child with me? All of these questions that come into play. And over and over again, I just had to keep detaching. Okay, I'm going to redo this part. Okay. Um, so I've been following the dream of pregnancy for a very long time. You may have seen on social media, I am now pregnant and I am thrilled. Michael and I are so excited for this baby to come into the world. But I have been doing it from commitment, not from attachment. Now, I'm not saying I'm perfect because I definitely got attached many times over the years to wanting it to be a certain way or have it happen on a certain time frame. And I think for women in general with pregnancy, often we get very attached to your age, like how old you should be when you have your baby, like all of these things that people talk about. But I had to constantly remember my commitment. So whenever something would happen that would be difficult for me, and you can go back years, like I had a pregnancy loss, I had a divorce, I dated during COVID, and then I had to meet the person who would want to be and not only in a marriage with me, but want to create a family with me. There were so many steps I had to take along the way, and I had to really detach from timing over and over and over again to just stay in my commitment and my vision that I wanted to have a baby and have a family. And so that's one example of where your commitment has to be super strong, but that is not the same as being attached to when it happened. And now that we're on the side of like we're pregnant, the baby is healthy, that I'm like, wow, the timing is so perfect for me and Michael, like for so many different reasons. It reminds me of something I heard from a coach when I was dating, because I was also very attached during the dating process to wanting to meet a partner as soon as possible. And I remember hearing from a coach once that, well, you might be ready, but the person you're supposed to be with, they might not be ready. And that really struck a chord with me like, wow, it's true. Like, I don't know if that person's ready or not. And I don't want to meet them until they're actually ready for me. And when I finally did meet Michael, it was the exact right time for both of us. We were both finally ready to meet each other when we did. And that's how I think often about this detachment and attachment thing, why it's so important. I was very detached from the person and when they would show up and the timing of all that. And I was really committed still at that time to meeting somebody who wanted to have a family and create a life together. And so when I met Michael, it was like so clear that we had to both reach that perfect timing in our own lives to be together. And that opened the door for us to have a family together. So are you guys picking up what I'm putting down? I know I'm kind of talking in different time frames about my life, but it's really important for us to understand why detachment is such a crucial part of this. This is how we start to open up new pathways, whether it's in having a family or having your career come to fruition the way that you're hoping for it to happen, or for you to just open your life in a totally new way. And you don't really need to know how. Like, this is where my clients get super attached. They're always like, Nicole, how is this going to happen? And our job is not the how. When we are detached, we can let go of the how. We can simply know that we are supposed to follow the pathway that is laid out in front of us. And we go really deep on this in Your Clear Calling, and we work on this at length with people because it can be very hard to train out those old patterns of attachment and to get ourselves into committed and detached. And committed and detached to me is the most powerful practice you can bring into your life to really understand what you're about, where you're going, what matters to you, and you're totally detached from how it occurs, the time frame, and all of those pieces. So I'm not saying don't have goals. And in fact, I am fully always going to advocate for you to have the biggest, most amazing dreams and goals. And detachment is one of the main keys for you to have those big dreams come true in a really, really profound way. So I would love to hear how this resonates with you. And I also have a question for you to leave for all of you to work on this one. Actually, I have two questions. And here's the place to start. So if there's something in your life where you're feeling very attached, like you're like my client who has the job that she wants, ask yourself first, why are you attached? Why are you attached? Like, what is this dream going to give you that you currently don't have in your life? And then the second question is, what are you afraid will happen if you don't get it? And if you can play with those two questions, those will start to help you really investigate the deeper levels of what's going on in that attachment. And then DM me at Nicole Song on Instagram and tell me what you find, because I would be really curious to know where you're playing at around that attachment piece. So share that with me. If this episode resonates with you, share it on Instagram, tag me at Nicole Song. And I am so excited to hear from you about how this one landed. All right, friends, have the most beautiful day, and I'll see you all next week.